Hello, and welcome to Locutors of Trek, the podcast where we talk about the people, places, and things of Star Trek. So, replicate yourself a Romulan ale or your synth selection of choice, and join us far beyond the stars.
Locutors of Trek.
Program initiated. Enter when ready.
Well, hi there. It's Dave.
And I'm Davan.
We are Locutors of Trek, back again to...
Here we are. To embrace the topic of relationships.
That's right.
Proximity alert.
It's an interesting feature of the development of psychology as a discipline, and particularly the history of psychoanalysis, that where Sigmund Freud starts with the mind in its singularity, pushed up from the libidinous depths of the early creature into a kind of lonely ride atop the beast that is the id. And Jung tries to connect those things with notions of the kind of archetypal material we may all carry with us in more and less literal ways at various moments of his career. An interesting inheritor of theirs, Heinz Kohut, who's understood to be the developer, essentially, of a thing called self-psychology, spoke about a selfhood that was fundamentally relational, whose fundamental activity was attachment, either through play or parenting or sexuality or consumption or work, labor. And so there are ways within our own contemporary world of thinking about ourselves as always implying and requiring an other through whom and with whom we understand ourselves.
From the biology perspective, we're social creatures.
Absolutely.
We always have
group
been.
Creatures, yeah.
And that's not going to change anytime soon. We need to embrace that to get to the Star Trek.
I think you're quite right, yeah.
Get a little of the nuts and bolts out of the way, I guess.
Oh, yeah, do it up.
We've been expanding a little bit here on Locutors of Trek. You can check us out on YouTube and Twitch and Facebook, where we post our videos. And we do live streams. We're doing debates, our Debate 9, The Trouble with Trivia.
You can even see some HeroClix getting played on there.
HeroClix Star Trek battles on there. We're going to try to weave a bit of a story scenario through that. So that's fun. Especially for me. I just get to play HeroClix. And we have a nice segment coming up.
Oh, yeah, coming
called
up.
The Writer's Room.
Yeah, we're going to try and emulate the feel of writing a season of Star Trek.
Yeah.
One of the modern sort of 12, 13 episode style things. But our tone will be to be determined. Our ship is fairly determined, but we'll unveil that at the time.
Don't miss that one. I'm looking forward to it. I really am.
And so, if you got it in your head, think about, say, the writer's room in Far Beyond the Stars, but with ideally far less dysfunction and more production of Star Trek stories.
Oh, yes. None of that type of dysfunction here.
We don't have that. No. None of that. No wrinkles, no zippers.
No. A writer's not Viking.
Vikings everywhere begin to bring out their copies of the sagas and Eddas and say, hey, no.
But yeah, you can hear us play some songs on there too.
That's true.
We're going to keep it different. There's a lot of other
true.
segments we have planned that are things we've done on the podcast here yet. And it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, we're branching out.
But if you love your Locutors of Trek podcast the way it is, do not worry. The main podcast is not changing. We are here for you.
Indeed. We're here with you even.
As we speak of relationships. But
indeed,
why don't we do a top 5 to kick us off here?
Oh, lovely.
We thought we would do our top 5 relationships that we wanted to see more of.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
Let's start at our number 5s.
All right.
Would you like to go first, Dave?
Our number 5, my number 5 is... may not be the most popular one, but I would love to see even a couple of short treks with this in it. That kind of an idea. I'd love to see more of the relationship between Wesley and the Traveler.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
See, I could see an animated thing with that, or short treks again, just
Yeah, that would be.
showing some places they go to.
I almost
or-
think it would have to be animated, or at least would be best done that way.
oh
Because
yeah,
they're gonna be on some high plane adventures.
oh absolutely, yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, what a great place to pick up in like an episode of Lower Decks.
Oh, wouldn't that be great? Well,
Oh.
they arrive and there they are.
And I just want to know that Wesley's okay.
Yeah, the last time we see him
He
is
leaves with a creepy
at the wedding.
No, that's
in
true.
what is that, in Nemesis?
Yeah.
And so at some, he's either it looks like he's wearing a Starfleet uniform in that. So at some
Yeah.
point he's come back and is
He was just
working
off
with
to learn some
Starfleet.
things. That was an interesting episode of TNG with all that.
Oh yeah, that was a really interesting, and again, right out in the Cardassian neutral zone,
Yeah.
with the beginnings of the Maquis, right?
What a good way to kick us off. I wouldn't have thought of that one, but
It's a really interesting nexus of stuff, you know.
Yeah, the stories.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, my number 5 is Uhura and Scotty. And the reason I chose them is because in most missions, away missions, episodes even of Star Trek, the original series, it's Kirk, Spock, and McCoy beaming down to the planet.
Mhm.
So most of the time, or at least a lot of the time, during all the episodes we see, it's just Scotty and Uhura running things back on the ship, and we don't get to see a lot of that. Like, I think that's something that in a more modern show, they would have touched on a lot more. Like, that would have been such an important dynamic on, say, a TNG or DS9 or something like that. These two who are always left to command the ship and everyone off is off doing things and getting into the space battles and doing the politics. Like, it's so interesting.
Oh yeah.
You get the engineer and the communications officer. I just think I think they did kind of touch on a bit of a almost romance between those two in the series a little.
Oh, I think, and Star Trek 6, I think, hints at that as well. Points at that. But even just the two of them on screen, like James Doohan and Nichelle Nichols, are just such great on-screen presences well, that them having a little more time would have been really beautiful.
I think that's one of the things that left me wanting from that original series.
Yeah. Well, I think the few scenes they really do get to kind of sizzle together in just give you a taste for more. You know, it'd be what a lovely thought. Absolutely lovely. Talk about a pair that don't get enough screen time. And this one is a real romance that never got to get wings, is Tuvok and Nos.
Oh, Tuvok and Nos.
I really like the episode Gravity.
Me too.
From Voyager, was that season 4 or 5?
And the character of Nos.
Yeah, played by, I know I've lost her name, but she also played Tank Girl.
Yeah.
She's great.
Lori Petty.
I think that's right. Yeah, exactly.
She's a great actress. I love her and everything. She was in A League of Their Own.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
she was in
pops up everywhere.
Orange is the New Black. Great actress.
Yeah, and the way she shows up, you just get this whole view of a shuttlecraft and Voyager and all that sort of stuff that is a lovely outside view that gets to come inside and get to know Tuvok in a whole different way. And that moment when they mind meld right at the end.
Yeah.
And
it's
he's finally
ending.
like,
very sweet,
in a way that's appropriate to his own sensibilities, give her the feelings that he can't ever really articulate in his conscious sort of non-melded life.
Yeah, his way of saying, I feel some of these things you want me to feel. I can never show you or tell you that. This is the only way I will ever be able to tell you.
Like just be one with me in that sense.
What a great character that would have been great to have join the crew though. And
I don't know. When the episode started, I thought, oh really? Like, is she gonna? But yeah,
that's a good one.
She can't. But yeah.
I like the way you're going with this. I admit I've picked a little bit more established characters.
Oh, interesting. Right on.
You've been going with, so I think this is nice. We might not get any crossover here. My number 4, Kapla. Worf and Kern.
Oh yeah.
This reminds me of the episode where they're just like, it's the last one of Kern where they erase his memory.
Yeah.
Sons of Moog. And they're just disagreeing about everything. And Kern's just like, well, there's one thing I know. The Sons of Moog should never have been separated. And he's just like, on that I agree. And of course we can't get that. We're never going to get them.
Yeah.
But I love their dynamic even, as adults. Kern is a living, ingrained Klingon.
Oh yeah.
And cultural Klingon, and Worf has this idealized version of what he thinks that is, and Kern sort of lives up to some of those ideals, and some of them he doesn't. And
His beast is roasted in the sun.
And Worf lives up to all of the, idealized versions of what it is to be a Klingon. He's the most like honorable and idealized version of a Klingon that you see.
Oh, yeah.
He's the guy who kind of embodies that.
But he sort of can't Klingon his way out of a paper bag in real Klingon life.
No, or even in that Sons of Moog episode where, Kern has to shoot that guy, and Worf's just like, oh, what? You didn't have to do that. He was backing down. And he's just like, he was going to kill you, Worf.
Yeah.
And just surprised that Worf didn't know that. And, that, shakes Worf to the core for the rest of that episode. He's just like, someone decided to kill me while I was staring at them in the eyes, and I didn't know it.
Yeah.
And Judge is like, so no one can. He's just Klingon can. But I just love that dynamic where they have so much really to learn from each other.
Yes.
I feel like it sucks that they had to erase Kern's memory, but they left that kind of almost impossible to give him his memories back.
Yes.
When they do it. So I would love to see if there's ever this Captain Worf show.
Oh my gosh. Oh my
bring
gosh.
Kern back with his memories, and
that would be amazing.
I mean, it's Tony Todd, man. It's Tony Todd.
Can you imagine?
Give me more Tony Todd and Michael Dorn acting together.
Put them on the bridge of a Klingon bird of prey and just send them. I love Michael Dorn's idea is just basically Worf's got to clean up the Empire somehow.
Oh man,
it would. Oh my gosh, it would be amazing. Worf constantly irritated, trying to problem solve.
Make it happen.
Oh man,
Worf and Kern, the Sons of Moog, call the series. The Sons of Moog.
Indeed.
You can even throw Alexander in there. Oh, and
here, Sons of Kahless.
And you can even throw in Nikolai. Not a son of Moog, but a brother of Worf.
Indeed. Oh, that would be interesting.
And you get Paul Sorvino in there acting up a storm. Oh, this is going to be a good show.
Oh,
anyway,
man.
Tune into the writers.
That's right. When we'll also write a season of that. Just pro bono. It'll be good. Oh, man. So, my number 3 on this list is... Well, these kind of have a what if quality to them, What if we had more of this? I wish we knew more about Romulan Commander, who is so sadly betrayed by Spock during the Enterprise incident.
So more of their relationship?
I would love to see whether they were able to have any further contact with each other. Because she could easily still have been alive when Spock was on Romulus in his sort of quasi underground crypto diplomatic quality. That would be a fascinating.
That'd be the female Romulan.
Yeah,
Sharvanek.
Is that her name? Yeah. Do we get her name?
Yep, Sharvanek.
Oh, I didn't realize.
I have her hero click. Tune into our hero click battles.
Sharvanek
will get played eventually.
Yes. That is exactly who I would love to see more of on screen with Spock. That's her.
Yeah, her.
Yeah, with that wonderfully soft lighting.
Yeah, very nice.
Classic Trek.
All right.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Yeah.
There you go. There's that ride in the turbo lift at the end of that episode. The whole ending sort of sequence there is just marvelous.
Yeah, I like that one. I really like the way we went totally different ways with this.
We've diverged quite strongly.
Yeah. All right. My number 3, Captain Benjamin Lafayette Sisko, and Jadzia, and through Jadzia, Curzon. Because I feel like they didn't get a lot of time together on the show. And given the relationship that Ben had with Curzon, but also that Ben develops with Jadzia, there just didn't really seem to be enough time. How Jadzia embraces that. How Ezri's just like, I'm not the old man. Stop. I'm not all these past lives. I just remember their stuff. Jadzia is not like that. She's like, I am all these people. So I just feel like there would have been a lot more moments, and we get a couple of them, but of her really being that kind of mentor figure to him, but him also being the mentor figure to Jadzia. Like they had that beautiful dynamic. Oh, yeah. And I really didn't feel like that got fleshed out enough, especially with all of the trying decisions and stuff that Ben had to make, Jadzia had to make. I feel like they would have had these discussions.
Yeah, even seeing her help him get into a little mischief, in a very sort of Curzon bringing Benjamin along to get into trouble with him would have been great fun too, you know. And you get those sort of intimations that that's still part of their relationship, but
we just don't get to see enough of it.
Yeah, because it would have been interesting to see that, and the change of dynamic with him being a commander and then a captain now, right, in this different position where he has to be differently, you know. Oh man,
chugging along here, this is fun.
So now here is a point of overlap, but not a place where we're actually doing the same thing.
Oh my.
So this comes up to my number 2, and just because he's one of those great jokes, and I don't know how you do it, you might have to keep him off screen, but he is hideous. I would just like to see Dax and Captain Baudet.
I don't like Captain Baudet.
I knew you weren't going to like this one, but I would just, I would like even just fan art of just them at the Replimat. I would just like to see a representation of
him
Captain
heavily
Baudet,
shadowed,
maybe with a hood on or a toque,
something. Yeah, right.
You know,
at least give us a warning so I'm not eating. Right?
That's true. You don't want to see that brain pulsating a little while you're eating.
Not really.
Yeah, that's the danger of having.
Plus, I don't want to just hear him go on and on. Do you really just want to hear him go? Actually, I do.
He is charming.
Yeah, he's very charming. He has interesting stories. No, I like that one. I would like to see more Baudet as well. I don't like him. I don't have to like him.
No, but he does have an interesting mind.
I don't have to like Kai Wynn, but I like seeing her on screen.
That's true.
Okay, that's a good.
All right.
I don't like Captain Baudet.
I think Worf says that most times he's mentioned in his presence as well. I'm pretty sure.
And so does Julian. Julian doesn't.
That's true. I know. I don't like him.
I don't see what she sees in that guy, other than his brain. My number 2, the original Tailor himself, Elam Garrick, and Odo.
Oh.
Now, Now, in the book A Stitch in Time, check out our most recent supplemental, the Spying, Sewing, and Spacements.
Indeed. And we get a beautiful moments of their relationship.
We do. That just starts to develop in, like, say, season 7, really, of Deep Space Nine. We do get a couple scenes of them. Biggest instance of their relationship we really get to see is when Garrick has to torture him.
Yeah.
So
that is an important moment.
They reach an understanding through that moment, strangely enough, just given the kind of people that they are. They're alike in some ways, but very different in some ways. I mean, the two actors could just,
that's true.
They could bounce off each other for an entire episode, I'm sure.
Yeah. Although, that puts me in mind of one of the great gifts of the pandemic to all of us Trek lovers was the 4-part Alone Together, which gave us more Julian and Garrick, a little bit of Jake Sisko, and a little bit of Quark and some other people.
Alas, no Odo.
No Odo. Sadly missed. Yeah, but that was a beautiful thing and really perked me up, round about March last year or
Oh yeah, me too.
April.
Quite excellent.
Yeah. Now, so my number 1 relationship I just want to see more of. We just did not get enough of it. I did feel, like the song said, the best is yet to come. Cassidy Yates and Benjamin Sisko, man.
Yeah, that's true. Didn't get enough time, especially with them as expecting parents,
Yeah. It's it was beautiful to watch that relationship develop. They're two very sensitive actors, and they took those scenes and the way that their expectations, their histories, their understanding of history, which plays so strongly in their early relationship,
Their initial kind of dalliance was very believable and fun.
Yeah.
Jake trying to set them up forever. A freighter captain. I don't know.
It's true, because she's mentioned in 2 or 3 episodes, particularly one of my favorites, the light ship episode.
Oh yeah, we hear her name before we see her. Before, I think.
Yeah, which is what a marvelous relationship. I mean,
what a good one.
Yeah, just beautiful.
It might be my favorite romance in Star Trek, and we don't get to see a lot of it, but it's one of the most believable.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And yeah, just so well acted. They really had chemistry.
Yeah.
My number one, and I must say, it's the thing when I think back on this series from Voyager, and I love Voyager, but the thing that leaves me the most sour, because we had 7 seasons, and I feel like this is the thing I feel like I was robbed of almost, and that is Captain Janeway and Tuvok.
Oh.
As go listen to our Janeway supplemental, the Janeway Protocols, as we know their relationship goes way back, which of course they hint about, but he's really the only person that she has, at least until she develops like newer relationships with Chakotay and things, to really talk to, and for these years and making these crazy decisions that no captain's ever had to make. And she does seek out his wisdom and counsel, because he's a very wise guy and has a lot of good insight, and is a bit of a flexible thinker for a Vulcan.
Yeah.
Like he has more of a sense of humor than your average Vulcan too, you know.
Oh, for sure.
And he pretends he's not being funny, but he knows he is, and it's hilarious. But
I don't think he's proud of his insight into humor.
But they're also my 2 favorite characters on that show. So I just feel like I was slightly robbed of my 2 favorite characters really interacting, when really there was every reason for them to have had a lot more scenes together based on their past.
And there's so much space in some of the later seasons taken up with the relationship between Janeway and Seven of Nine,
which I love as well.
Which is good, but it gets a huge proportion of screen time compared to some others, you know?
Yeah, I just feel like there was room. There was room on that show for that.
Yeah.
And that's why I just feel I love that show, but I'm a little sour about that. I wish I could have seen more Janeway and Tuvok. Maybe we can get that going forward on Prodigy or something, maybe. Bring back all the
give them to us now, quickly.
So yeah, that was fun. No crossover. I wonder if that's the first time in history of top 5s for us.
I think it may be.
Maybe. Yeah, so relationships. The relationships of Star Trek. Relationships in the age of interstellar travel in itself is kind of something that Star Trek has to address, whether it's directly or indirectly. And there's some things I've noticed about that. First thing that comes to mind is like long distance relationships, and there has to be a lot of that, a lot of communication. You don't see people for a long time. What I notice about friendship in this age of interstellar travel is it's all about who's around you at the moment, it seems. Like if you see some character that has some sort of ceremony, whether it be a wedding or whatever, the people that they invite, like take Worf's best men, for example.
Yes.
He hadn't known Julian all that long at that. Like you're thinking, oh, what? No Riker, or no, like, you know, the people he had been close to on Enterprise. Like,
they could have been 120 light years away.
Right.
So I see what you mean.
The world of your relationship seems to be very much a lot less kind of long distance communication and relationships than I would have initially thought, I think, where it's just you just spend your time and your relationship energy and time with the people that you can kind of do things with, and that you'll see again.
Although I mean, the interesting counterpoint of that is the way in which those precious communications that do come through from those who are far away, they're not super common, it doesn't seem like, but their appearance, and particularly, and that's highlighted really beautifully in Voyager, of course, and on Enterprise in a number of ways as well. The great game with the water polo match and all that sort of stuff.
The finals.
Precisely, right. That way of characterizing distance by, it's almost like the arrival of the object, but the arrival of missing the person at the same time, is a really interesting feature of that way of living. And I wonder if it wouldn't have certain kinds of parallels with life in, say, the Age of Sail, when people are going on these long ocean voyages and then living potentially the rest of their life in another part of the world that's so separated relative to the speeds at which they can travel, that
writing letters.
That's really what you've got, and that travel may take a long time in itself. And that's it. It's a really interesting point you make about that sort of feature of consciousness that there's. I wonder if that doesn't appeal to the sense of kind of rootedness in place, that kind of attachment taking place on a starship, where, just as you say, the place where I am doesn't stay stable. Even though, I wake up in the same bed every morning, whatever it is, I may be, at Rigel today, and, tomorrow we're headed for Tellar. So the sense in which those communications are really contingent, and the relationships themselves have the contingencies of deployment and that sort of thing. Now, I wonder whether we wouldn't find something different in different kinds of spacefaring arrangements. Like we see with, is it Boomer's family? Is that his name?
Oh, no, he is a boomer.
Yeah, he is a boomer.
Mayweather.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Who, these are family vessels. And in that sense, your rootedness and your close relationships have a biological situatedness as well, in terms of a related family group.
Well, yeah.
But what we really see is a lot of Starfleet relationships. And I think you're right to characterize those in the sense of the contingencies of Starfleet life, Yeah.
Well, another thing of major part of Starfleet life, interspecies relationships.
Oh, yeah.
Which is an interesting and very Star Trek type of relationship that we see in the original series. It all starts off with the human Vulcan dynamic.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Which is a great one. That one never gets old.
No,
you can do it again with Tuvok. You can always throw a Vulcan in there. Tallinn in the most recent Lower Decks.
Yeah.
Season.
And, especially given the questions of our own age about mechanization, industrialization, about the computer and the machine, as opposed to those features of ourselves which we more readily identify as sort of fleshy and feely and human and sort of maybe more ephemeral, but maybe more primordial as well, that tension is something that I think we all still work with as well. So thematically, that Vulcan human relationship is really relevant. But you're right, the other species we meet, from attempting to draw the Kzinti captain and the slaver weapon into combat because they can't back down, to finding a way to meet each other in that cell between Garrick and Odo. You're right. There's a ton of ways in which those complications form the meat of great stories.
As we see on Lower Decks again, some Kzinti have joined Starfleet.
Yeah, I thought I saw a Kzinti in the background of an episode there, which was very interesting. That's our second Kzinti in recent Star Trek.
Yes.
There's
We're having trouble with Kzinti.
That's right. Shields up.
Yeah, shield up.
I like it that his house has shields.
Just getting harassed by cats.
That kind of is living with cats.
But I think the series that has the most interesting take on interspecies relationship is Enterprise, being so new to them. They're trying to deal with Vulcans, and they don't understand that. Archer's trying to deal with Shran and Andorians, and they're all angry all the time. And he's like, I don't get this.
Oh yeah.
Him trying to figure out how to talk to a Tellarite is still one of my favorite scenes, of course.
Oh,
you're small and unimpressive.
What a great piece of dialogue.
My favorite Archer things are him trying to deal with who are they? He has to do the ritual and speak all. Perfectly.
Oh, that's right. Oh my gosh.
Oh my.
Well, Picard has his great time with that with others too.
Exactly. Archer, they made him chop some wood.
Yep.
Shirtless and sweaty. There's a lot of shirtless and sweaty on Enterprise. There was a sweaty time in Starfleet.
It's true. It's true. They call it the sweaty years.
The sweaty years.
Yeah, they get the Warp 5 sweats.
Yeah.
But no, I love the newness and the rough and readiness.
What were the uniforms they used in Enterprise?
Sweatsuits.
Optional.
The decontam gel must have. Oh my gosh.
It seems to me this mission has put an end to itself. Turn around.
Oh yeah, but yeah, no.
Great show.
One of my favorite moments in that whole series is actually, I think, maybe in the pilot episode where they first show up at the market, and you can see Orion's moving around, and you can see all of these different species, and these three Starfleet people just wander in, and they are just absolutely wide-eyed and gobsmacked. Didn't even know there were that many kinds of aliens, you know. Yeah, I could really relate to that moment, and you feel their excitement at all of that exploration as well.
And while we're on the topic of Starfleet, certainly we see hierarchical relationships
Mhm.
being kind of a military-based show, and it's always an important part of Star Trek. So chain of command and things like that.
Absolutely.
And the relationships between captains and commanders, captains and lieutenants, command officers, bridge officers, and the lower decks.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of different relationships there.
And those kinds of interesting conflicts are part and parcel of Star Trek from early times. There's I forget the episode now, the original series episode where the admiral takes over the ship at various points and just takes it places because he wants Kirk to stop doing whatever the heck he's doing. I forget. These things where people can pull rank on each other, or
wasn't the Doomsday weapon.
Oh, might have been actually, yeah.
Not Commodore. He was that Commodore guy.
Yeah, he was the Commodore guy.
Yeah, I think that might be Doom.
But the other kinds of we do see other kinds of hierarchical relationships as well. Between, say, the founders and the Vorta, or the founders and the Jem'Hadar, where the hierarchy is much less stable between the Vorta and the Jem'Hadar, though, right? The only thing making the Jem'Hadar do anything for the Vorta is the Ketracel White, which means the founders.
And
of
course we see the way Klingons do hierarchy.
You are a coward, and I challenge you for command of the ship.
Well, and this brings us back to Worf and Kurn, right?
Yeah.
That moment where, at one moment, Kurn is the sort of dominant, and all of a sudden he says, "No, I am the elder brother. You will do as I say and make the squadrons go this way."
Yeah, you're the captain of the ship, but I am the elder brother, so I might as well be captain.
Yeah, yeah.
It's no Captain Kurn show; it's the Captain Worf show.
Or even, at the moments
when
when Worf looks at Picard and says, "You are my Chadich."
Yeah.
The Chadich will do what I say.
Yeah. Chadich will be silent.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So good. He may be the only person to successfully do that to Picard ever, in that moment, at least in the series that I can recall. But yeah, hierarchical relationships have a really interesting sort of narrative power. In that they have this sort of force of authority, but they can also set up these great conflicts in terms of bringing ethical principles to bear in the immediate situation,
And at least depending on the one, and one side of those kind of relationships will be like, well, I've been where you're at. Because in the Starfleet model and things like that, where you're just working your way up, it's like, yeah, look, I know I'm talking to you like an ensign, but I had lieutenants talk to me like an ensign, and they called me Ensign Babyface.
Yeah. And then the other side of that, maybe one of the other worst examples of that would be, say, the drumhead, which
we've never talked about on this show before.
You may not have heard of this episode. We certainly rarely think of it. But there's a hierarchy that's become essentially a kind of totalitarian, authoritarian structure very quickly. It's kind of metastasized very quickly, and they have to do a pretty surgical thing at the end of that episode. Picard does to stop it. You make a good point though about like the fruitful side of hierarchy. The word itself has a long history, but it's not super long, because it was coined about 1400 years ago by a guy named Dionysius the Areopagite.
Yes.
Or the pseudo Dionysius, if you prefer, who's
very interesting guy.
Yeah, fascinating. Otherwise, we don't know anything about him. Might have been Syrian, but we're not sure. Educated in Athens, but coins in two of his great texts, the Ecclesiastical Hierarchy and the Celestial Hierarchy. He coins the word hierarchia to take over a word, taxis, from a guy named Proclus, who he'd clearly read a lot of. But hierarchia means hero or hieros, so holy or sacred, and arche, a source or arrangement. So this is something that in its outset is supposed to be something that allows its members at every moment to flourish
Hmm.
where they are and where they'll flourish best. But we also see these moments in which that hierarchy becomes essentially a cacarchy, something that just circulates misery and immiseration perfectly or near perfectly, like say with Picard becoming a Borg or something like that, right? Where you have this very vertical, singular.
Or all these
hierarchy.
bad rolls,
Oh yeah,
it can go wrong.
mm-hmm. Or even with where Sloan is able to kind of weave and dodge through the hierarchies that he works with, much like Elam Garrick would.
What do you think of the burdens of command and how that affects your relationship? Because I would say, especially as it comes to Janeway and like Picard, because he forces it to be that way. I mean, Picard could have friends if he wanted to, but
that's the
Janeway
way he
has to
understands
isolate
being a
herself
commander.
more.
Yeah,
it's
for
true.
sure. That's his style, but
Yeah.
you're right. It's kind of her necessity.
Yeah.
No, I think the burdens of command is one of those things that Star Trek's really interested in. In various ways, right? We see it. One of the most beautiful negative depictions of it has to be Jake Sisko's experience on the battlefield, where he sees the kind of negation of the command structure. He sees the negation of courage. He sees the negation of all these things, but nevertheless comes confronted with a real living and dying soldier on a battlefield.
Great scene.
Which just levels them completely, right?
What a great guest actor too. He really
he was brilliant.
Yeah.
But at the other side of that, we see, as you say, those captains and commanders who end up necessarily in a singular position where they have to do something ultimately supported but alone. So what do you think of the burdens of command?
I do find interesting the different ways the captains we see handle it. They all handle it very differently. Like you say, Picard understands this isolated view of command. It's like, I have to remain objective and I can't like these people too much. I won't be able to make the right decisions when I need to. And of course, Janeway has to force this isolation because it's just a complicated situation they're dealing with. She's struggling with objectivity already because it's, she thinks of it more of a family.
Sure. And
because of guilt with her, she's isolating herself through her guilt.
Sure.
But I find Sisko is interesting too. It's like Sisko will be your friend. He just wants to scare you a little bit.
He definitely wants you to know who's where the buck stops.
He does it to Worf. He does it to Jadzia. And even Kira. He snaps Kira right back. In the first episode, she does a runaround on him and contacts the Admiral. And she's just like, let me tell you why that's not happening.
Yeah. Now, Kirk's command style to me is an interesting standout, maybe most closely mirrored by Archer's.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in that sense, placing them in that part of the history makes sense.
It's more traditional, I guess.
Yeah, but Kirk is, the whole notion of sort of cowboy diplomacy that both Spock and Bones remark on at a couple of points.
Archer definitely wants to be your friend.
He does. He wants to be
inviting everyone to dinner in the captain's quarters.
On the team. He's a big team guy. Kirk understands himself to be special.
Yes.
And that's one of the things that makes him James T. Kirk.
Yeah.
And that completely inflated sense of self is matched by deeds, because it's like he throws the idea of James T. Kirk at a situation.
There's no Kobayashi Maru when there's James T. Kirk on the bridge of the Enterprise.
He'll just cheat.
Yeah. Hey, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. A great cheater once said.
But his relationship to command is athletic.
Yeah.
And in that sense, to me, he's very much like Archer, but he's also very much like Riker, particularly the Riker we meet in Lower Decks.
Yeah.
I
love Riker, Lower Decks Riker.
He's like, what are we doing?
We're gonna have to shoot our way out.
But again, you can
Give
see
me 3, 4, 5, 6.
One of the interesting things I find is when we see the crew of the Titan, they have such a different character than the crew of the Enterprise. They're a bunch of yahoos.
Oh yeah,
and
he got the crew he wanted.
Absolutely right. But their remark about string concertos, you can really see the way in which one of the burdens of command, or the realities of command, is that the style influences the whole culture of the ship. And that's
Yeah.
true institutionally as well, right? If you got a bad manager up top that you can't dislodge, that's just terrible to everybody, but no one can do anything about, your dynamic in that group is gonna develop in certain very particular guarded self-protective ways. And that could well be something more like the command style that we see, say, on Cardassian ships, where there's an awful lot of infighting and constant plotting against each other.
And the captain is elevated even more so on a Cardassian ship.
Oh, even
Like
the
even
way
in
we
the
see the
freighter ranks
structure.
where they're expected to take a cut of whatever they're hauling and
Mhm,
everything. It's just,
mhm.
The captain have a lot of privileges on a Cardassian ship.
Well,
You
and
know,
the Deep Space
Cardassians
Nine as a
enjoy a
station
little bit of
makes that
power.
point really well, right?
Yeah.
Like the way the office is so
Yeah,
high up
yeah,
those
exactly.
steps and everything.
Yeah,
Uh,
not
they
very
remark on that at a
Starfleet.
couple of points.
They
you know,
do, yeah.
Uh,
They like to look down. Ducat like to look down, see
absolutely.
what was going on. Yeah,
And so that verticality is something that gets remarked on a lot of times, you know. Whereas you think about I love the structure of the Klingon bridge, where the captain is literally like in the middle of this red space, surrounded by these pipes that are like arteries. It's like he's just a heart,
yeah.
or whichever, you
Yeah,
know,
the Klingon heart.
just beating away. And right,
Yeah.
and it's such a beautiful evocation of what they are as a spacefaring people, their relationship to spacefaring and each other. That they really need to have that thumping the consoles, let's get moving kind of song happening, you know?
Yeah, and I like when Jadzia describes how it works, and Chief's just like, "What? How does the ship run if everyone's plotting to kill each other?" She's like, "Oh no, it's not that bad." Like, I mean, they are all plotting to kill each other, but it's like, you know, most of them aren't going to act on it.
Yeah. Like, lots of fistfights, very few murders.
Yeah. Oh yeah, like,
you know?
Alexander gets in the fight. She's like, "Hey, but he was just gonna cut him a bit."
Yeah, you made me think,
Wasn't
just
kill
a
him.
whole ship full of Jane Cobb.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah.
I was going to get me in here. Oh, man.
I'll be in my bunk.
Oh, one of his best lines.
Yeah. He has to say it twice in that episode.
That's true.
This is not a Firefly podcast, but
No.
I do love Firefly.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, shiny.
Yeah, that was very shiny. All right.
Now, one of the things that we didn't talk a whole lot about before when we were talking about sort of generally relationships, but we touched on particularly in Starfleet was, and you know, this is going to touch on eras and moments in Starfleet and the Federation's history differently, is family relationships in space, and particularly in this case, in the kinds of space travel we see in Star Trek, particularly, we're seeing a lot of exploratory and military forces interacting, you know, state institutional groups.
I think as far as like a traditional idea of a family, because, you know, on most shows they end up considering each other family, the crews by the end of it, and that's perfectly fine as well.
At a level, it's understood beautifully under the notion of what's called fictive kinship, right? The families we paint together, as opposed to being born into.
But I think the series that we see the most family relationships on is by far Deep Space Nine, of course, because they're in a stationary place. But we get to see, of course, the Ben Sisko, Jake Sisko, Joseph Sisko family relationship, and of course when Cassidy joins.
Yeah. We also get the Ferengi family.
Yes.
And the O'Briens.
And the O'Briens, absolutely. Those were certainly the three I was thinking of. And probably the three most prominent family relationships we see in all of Star Trek, all on that one show, I think.
Certainly the ones that we spend the most time on.
I mean, we certainly have things like, Sarek and Spock.
Sure.
But they don't really like each other.
And Naomi Wildman, subunit of Ensign Wildman.
Yeah, she is a subunit, but we don't see Samantha very often.
No.
We've more seen Naomi.
That one time she gets stuck in a shuttlecraft, we see a lot of her, but that's about it.
And when she gives birth to Naomi
That's
Wildman.
true. That's true. But yeah, those you're right. They're probably the families we spend the most time with.
And of course, I guess you could potentially count Unimatrices. No, I guess we sort of debated which is closer, a Unimatrix or a family on
I've thought a lot about that question after that debate. Man, some of those stick.
It was a good debate.
And I wonder whether there wouldn't be a sense of home and family just because of the sort of orientation in the drones, whether they're conscious of anything at all, really.
And they speak of like a comfort that it gives you.
Mm-hmm.
At least Seven would. It's like it's not.
Well, and peace.
You feel comfortable in this collective. She's like, it's not
Yeah.
like terrible all the time as you might imagine.
No, I mean, I think most
You're
Borg
limited, certainly, but
but they're just calm all the time. They're chill in that sense,
But like you're constantly being, I guess you could say, entertained or distracted, being bombarded by information like all the time, or whenever you want it. If you
for sure.
If you have want,
as
a drone.
That's true. Want is probably irrelevant.
I think she says that at some point.
Yeah. But the family relationships in an extended way, we see particularly with Joseph Sisko and some others, and then there's the relationships that persist aboard a starship. And the first place in Star Trek that we see that, other than what is it, Star Trek 2 or 3, where we first see Kirk's son,
David.
David.
Another Dave.
Is one of the Daves we know. Sorry, another deep historical Canadian cut there. But no, the relationship that I'm thinking about are the families on the Enterprise D. The fact that there are children and families aboard is one of the things that initially set it apart from the original Enterprise.
What is this boy doing on my bridge?
Right? That family relationship, particularly Wesley and Beverly,
that's another one,
and to Jean-Luc as well, is a really interesting relationship. But the fact that was a relatively short-lived piece of Starfleet history is also interesting to me. The design, from what I understand, the design lineage of the Nebula, Galaxy, New Orleans, all those sort of sets of classes, was intended because they were looking forward to something that was largely peacetime. Now, by largely peacetime, we still mean that like the Cardassian border wars were happening on and off throughout this.
Oh, yeah.
There were fights with the Tellarians and all sorts of people, but
the Zencat.
There weren't massive wars with the Romulans or the Klingons or somebody like that, which had so dominated their perspective that in Kirk's time, they very much were a fairly militarized ship in some ways. So the idea with these newer sort of Brahms-led designs were to have a more pacific, a more exploratory, get back to that time when we were explorers feel about them. But it meant that they sent families into space. Absolutely. Now, interestingly, this has historical relations with a period that I've spent some time on, which is
blimps.
Exactly. Zeppelins. No, the early months and years of the First World War were characterized in England by something called Kitchener's New Army, which was in large part composed in its newer recruits of something called PALS battalions. Those would be a battalion of people drawn up from a particular area, town, Lancashire or the 51st Highlanders or wherever we're going to go from. Many of these regiments were drawn up with brothers fighting side by side and all sorts of things, such that once the disasters of 1914, 1915, and early into the Battle of the Somme in 1916, summer had shown their terrible toll, that sort of troop arrangement was broken up because the populations back home, the families just could not endure a whole town getting the letter notice that, Johnny or Timmy or Billy or whoever it is gone or in a hospital somewhere with, serious, terrible wounds or whatever it is, right? So the casualties became so brutal that they had to change the way they organized because of their fundamental understanding of the function of the family and of the fabric of the nation that these people were off shooting people about. That it would end up just tattered if they let that go on. And I think we see that happen in Starfleet and the Federation as well, because the ships that we see coming out after, say, Wolf 359 or after the beginning of the Dominion
Yeah,
War.
then they're militarizing again.
Right? We're getting the Defiant, the Sabres, the
Thunder Child,
Novas,
whatever that.
right?
class was.
The Akira classes, which are all very small, very heavily armored, heavily shielded, high weapon power ships built to destroy Borg cubes or defend the borders of the Federation.
And whatever that fancy thing was, Riker had a fleet of in the Picard series.
Oh yeah, I forget what the name of that class is.
Yeah.
The Shen
Does he
Shenzhou.
say?
I think that the class is named.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
I think.
but I don't
yeah.
remember what it is. I'll see if I can find it. Maybe
Yeah.
for the next trivia game.
And oh, well, there you go. We always have reasons to remember this stuff later.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
such as my memory.
Yeah,
is.
I think the family relationship I think I enjoy on the most levels though is the Ferengi one. It's so good.
Oh,
We get
gosh.
3 generations. We get Moogie and Rom, and we get Nog. And of course, Uncle Quark,
Cousin Gala.
Cousin Gala.
Yeah.
An Eliminator Lek feels like family.
Oh gosh, one of my favorite characters in all of Star Trek. Honestly, now why did you call an Eliminator?
I don't care for Latinum. Yeah, he's pretty great. Just throws knives at the wall for no reason sometimes.
He's a little spastic, but he's really nice.
He's a nice guy. But
yeah.
definitely not Brunt.
No. Ugh, Liquidator Brunt.
Liquidator Brunt.
Brunt. FCA.
But in a way, it's sort of a family member in that family. Is Zek too by the end.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
But we just get to see a lot there too. A lot of different relationships. Maybe could have seen more Rom and Nog relationship. That maybe could have made our list earlier.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But we certainly get to see a lot of brotherly love.
Such as it is among Ferengi brothers. Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, Nog and sorry,
my
Rom
brother.
and Quark's
What's he gonna do? He's an idiot. He's always surprised if anyone talks about Rom for any reason. Like, what?
It's just like why are you even thinking about it?
It's clearly irrelevant to this business negotiation.
Oh, that's true.
But a Ferengi family is pretty funny. You know, it's very much like a kind of a business-minded family where, you know, they
Well, which rule of acquisition is it? Treat your friends like you treat your family?
exploit them.
Exploit them.
We'll get to that in the teaching eternal or avoiding eternal destitution for humans.
Oh, that.
Haven't been there in a while. We'll get to that. Maybe in our tragedy episode, because there's nothing more tragic than losing Latinum.
Destitution.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think the point you made earlier about family also in these situations being composed of the friendships we kind of contingently fall into, family being who we make it and compose it of, is a really lovely, enduring theme, I think, in all of Star Trek. Those relationships that the characters build that I think the writers notice and realize that both, you know, the actors they're writing for, the characters those people are playing, just work really well on screen, you know.
And even in a more humor driven show and in an animated one like Lower Decks, they're still not forgetting that aspect.
Oh no,
they're still like starting to tie that crew together, even with the lower deckers with the upper deckers.
Yeah, I particularly like the episode where Tandy and Mariner go off on their own. I'm like, yeah, we've never done this before.
Girls peak.
We don't spend time together. They realize they don't know anything about each other. It's a really great sort of meta way to make that joke, right?
Mistress of the Winter Constellation. Yeah, I don't really like to go by that.
Some Orions haven't been pirates in nearly 5 years.
Oh yeah, she's just like, how do I act like a pirate? She walks in, yar ye matey. What are you doing?
Oh man.
But yeah, that's a great one. I also love Shax and his baby bear.
Oh yeah.
Shax and his baby.
Baby bear, I'm coming, baby bear.
Shax is amazing.
Oh, and those friendships span careers, you know.
Yeah.
We've talked about this episode, I'm sure never before either, but the Wounded,
not.
with Captain Maxwell and O'Brien, you know, their friendship, or the friendship which brings Picard into contact with that Bolian guy.
That episode, the Wounded, no, it's just a freaking beautiful thing.
Oh, it's
that's
just
what we
it's
talk about it all the time. Just thinking about it now, I'm starting to be like, oh,
it's one of the real heights of TNG as a series. Just writing wise for sure. But yeah, those relationships will span entire careers, and they can determine the development of those careers as well. Or in this kind of what do we call it? An economy of experience.
Yep.
The relationship itself can be determined by the directions people choose. You think about the rift that developed in the relationship between Dr. Galen and Captain Picard.
Oh yeah.
Where Galen really felt Picard betrayed and abandoned him because he didn't pursue archaeology in any direct way.
And that's how that's how Quark felt about Nog not going into business.
Absolutely, yeah.
Of course, Rom's supportive. He's a great guy, but yeah, it's just like, what do you
Rom,
mean?
he's an idiot.
You mean you're giving up profit? Like, what is even happening?
Yeah,
it's very disappointing.
Or one of the relations, this could also have made the list, and I've mentioned it before, but the relationship between the Bajorans and the Skria is also one of those things that
that was complicated.
And such a brutal.
It's like, are we turning away refugees? Yeah, I think we are.
That's where we've arrived, and the beauty, and that should make our tragedy episode.
Don't you guys have an entire empty continent? Yeah, but if we put you there, it won't be empty, and
we just got it back. The sense that you have these two sets of real, honest, substantive goods clashing, and somewhere in there, the good has to lose for the good to prevail. That relationship to me has all kinds of heartache and potential in it.
So much of that with the Bajorans and certain Bajorans specifically as well. Like they even after the occupation, they're being put through the ringer. Their battles and philosophical and battles they have to fight and choices they have to make.
Well, and none of those relationships are settled. You're right. Not the governmental relationship isn't settled.
Nope.
Social relations have been completely revolutionized. Right. There's no caste and things anymore.
The religious thing is all in kerfuffle. Like,
you're right. Their economy is nuts. Yeah. And you think about the kind of trauma that world is going to carry, and try and heal from. And we see that come to bear as again against with the Skria,
Actually, while we're on that, what do you think of the relationship between the Bajorans and, say, the Prophets?
Oh gosh, again, it's a really elegant way for Star Trek to encounter the question of religious conviction and sort of cultural orientation in ways that I think kind of exceed what the original series or TNG were able to do for the most part. Because you get this long form meditation on what the Bajoran relationship to themselves, to their prophets, to the institutions, the Vedics, the assembly, all that stuff that exists to kind of mediate the prophets and the Bajorans.
It's just quite a unique relationship in Star Trek.
Get
to see
played
out in many other ways.
Well, and that to
me,
with
Kalas maybe.
But to me, one of the most extraordinary things in that whole complex that they show is the fact of the orbs of the prophets. Like that to me is really interesting, right? Because that
is like a direct communication.
And it's about it's about
a relationship.
Like it's literally like they have these boxes that contain burning bushes. Like, see, no, the prophets are real. The thing's right. You can't not say the prophet is right over there. Go touch that orb and meet the prophets.
I mean, right? Like I'm always telling you, you just got to have an orb experience.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's a phrase we hear several times in the series as well, right? I think it's a wonderful confounding of time and eternity and place and I couldn't say enough good things about the Prophets.
Well, I think the type of relationship we probably see the most of in Star Trek is the friendships.
Mm-hmm.
And those are some of the relationships I think we probably enjoy the most in Star Trek. Your O'Brien and Bashir's.
Oh, sure.
You know.
Yeah.
Uh,
The very complex friendship.
your
Bones
Tom and
Spock.
Harry's.
Sure.
Yeah. Your friendships, your buddies.
Worf and O'Brien as drinking buddies are some of my favorite scenes.
Oh,
O'Brien
no.
desperately
Oh, no.
trying to keep up with a Klingon. Oh, yeah.
He's like, well, if you want, we can skip the drinking and just start talking.
Yeah. Or everybody's favorite pal, Vic Fontaine.
Oh, he's everyone's pally.
But, you know, that's
especially ours.
To me, that's an interesting relationship they develop. And partly I love it that they just lean so hard into that 60s aesthetic. Kind of the Vegas, LA aesthetic almost. But
him and Nog's friendship is great.
That's just what I'm saying. The kind of therapeutic quality that Vic has demonstrates one of the primary functions of the holosuites, but does it in a way that's so lively.
Almost a bit of a mentorship going on there.
Oh, yeah. 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 And what Nog's able to do for him is quite beautiful as well. That and a good heist.
Oh,
you know.
When Frankie Eyes comes to town.
Yeah.
They call me Frankie Eyes.
But those friendships also can define other moments, right? Like the
Geordi and Data's another thing.
Yeah, the friendship between Spock and is it Leggett Parn, who brings him to Romulus, defines a whole era of
Pardek.
Pardek, that's right.
Leggett Parn would have been a Cardassian.
That's right. Yeah, so when Pardek brings him out there, it's like that all rests on their friendship, the possibility of developing friendship between Romulus and Vulcan more widely.
That they just kept going since they met at Kittimer. So they just noticed a similar view of the future between their people.
Whether Pardek was cultivating him the whole time, or whether, which I think is more likely, the Tal Shiar got interested in it and just put pressure on him slowly over time that made it impossible not to do this to Spock.
Who knows?
Yeah, it's hard to say. The last scene they have together is very ambiguous that way.
And of course, like maybe the friendship we see the most of is probably Tom and Harry. You know, they're always playing their holodeck games.
Oh yeah,
Captain Protons and playing some ice hockey, chasing after those Delaney sisters, hanging out at the Sandrines.
Well, and even their conception of their own friendship is interesting too, because Harry always protests his station in the friendship.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't want to be Tom Paris's
little buddy.
His little buddy.
But he was in the first episode. He saved him from Quark taking all his money.
Yeah. And we see a similar thing there with Boimler and Mariner, too.
Oh, yeah.
He doesn't want to be her little buddy, but he does want to be her friend. And she's not sure how to let him be her friend because he's such a weird nerd. But she does like him as her little buddy almost.
Well, she's a weird nerd, too. Like, if you know this thing about that show.
But if she let him get close enough, she would end up revealing her weird nerdiness, right? And I think that's why she does that with him, honestly.
Mariner and Boimler pretty much know everything about every ship. They know, like, what you're eating in 10 Forward on the Enterprise in season 3, episode 45. Like, those two know everything. But then, like, Mariner has gaps. Like, she doesn't know what a Ferengi is. She's like, I don't think that's a Ferengi. He's like, that's clearly a Ferengi. Look at his big ears and beady eyes and just like maniacal, like,
I love it that he does not get that, like, she's just giving him that moment. Clearly, I know what a Ferengi is. He's like, oh, God, that's great.
Yeah. I think that's a Bolian. It's that Bolian
I've
guy.
made that mistake. Yeah. I mean, probably the other friendship we see the most of is Bashir and O'Brien.
Yeah. Which I love.
They have some real ups and downs.
Every scene of it's beautiful. I love it.
But I think it's probably a good 2.5 seasons that O'Brien really just doesn't like Bashir at all. It's just like, oh, it's this guy again.
You know, he
just wants to play racquetball again.
Well, you know, Julian, you're just one of those kind of guys where you either, love you or, hate you. Like for me, for example, I used to hate you. And Julian's just like, and now? He's just like, and now? I don't. The relationship is so good.
Oh yeah.
They're like drinking. They're all like really drunk at Chiefs. He's just like, they're like singing that Jerusalem song.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
That was beautiful. Let's take it to Quark's. They're going to go sing it at Quark.
I've had that impression of myself before.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. The Tailors have had their moments, I suppose.
Oh, man.
But yeah, I mean, we could probably talk about the friendships of Star Trek for the rest of this episode.
Yeah.
But, and there are some that are very, of course, like your Picard and Guinan.
Mm-hmm.
There's some that we don't get to see, but we know are very established, like your Cisco and Jadzia as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's some that we get to actually, see develop.
Yeah.
I mean, Tom Paris and B'Elanna is an interesting friendship that way. And, it spills over into being a romance. But, I mean, they really start off, she just loathes him. Just cannot stand.
Oh, he's a Maquis traitor,
Yep. Yeah. And I think she really sees him in particular as pretty sketchy. Even for the rest of the Maquis, like he's sketched out.
Well, look, the first season, Tom Paris doesn't have many redeemable qualities. He's just
That's true.
Very skeezy with the ladies too. Everything he says is a bit gross.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tom Paris grows on you. But I think he's supposed to. That's
Well, part of that show, I think, is about him finding relationships that he can like settle into and not have to try and be a tough guy or whatever in.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of that's founded in his relationship with his clearly highly successful and decorated father.
Well, what about the romantic relationships of Star Trek? You were speaking earlier, of course, about Cassidy and Ben.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great romantic relationship. And, of course, Tom and B'Elanna you were just talking about.
Oh, yeah. Lovely moment outside in the dark in their space suits kind of changes their hearts for each other.
Yep.
Well, and Jadzia and Worf is one of the great romances of Star Trek.
When the beating of two Klingon hearts come together.
The end of that episode is just, the whole episode is great. Extraordinarily funny. But also the end of the episode where they do that, the sacrament of Klingon marriage is really, like, they really kind of bring you on to what amounts to Klingon sacred space there. And it's marvelous in that moment.
If you can't use real Vishnar candles, try not to use such obvious fakes.
Magnificent.
Isn't she? You've grown fat, and your hair has gone gray. My deterioration has continued at pace. That's my favorite line that Martok ever says.
He's just so completely different in that moment.
He's like, yeah, I'm a rugged old Klingon who was in prison for the 4 years or whatever.
She's like, yes, dear.
Yeah.
Nice to see you.
He's just like, there'll be many battles, and I won my share. But I know, deep in my heart, that she will win the war.
And I don't think he'd have it any other way.
No.
Yeah. It's a very agonistic kind of romance is the Klingon one. All those moments when Jadzia and Worf are coming into sickbay again at the start of the relationship.
They get in trouble because it's affecting their duty.
He's in as bad shape as she is normally.
Oh, yeah.
Which, again, one of those dimensions of Jadzia and Curzon's relationship with the Klingon life that is, just delicious.
Jadzia meets that Klingon. She's just like, oh, my mother met the great Curzon Dag. He was quite taken with her. Yeah, well, that's Curzon. Quite taken with a lot of people. And of course, the great romance of Quark and Lady Grilka. That's a Klingon love story if there ever was one.
It brought to us the House of Quark.
It did.
Yeah.
And an act of pure love, and certainly not of profit,
No.
gives it back to Grilka.
Yeah, they come to a really interesting kind of understanding with each other. by the end of that episode.
Yeah, they generally really like each other.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they really do.
And the rest of the Klingons hate the fact that she likes a Ferengi. Worf hates it.
He's so mad.
And everyone just thinks Grook is so magnificent, and Jedsy's just like, I don't think she's so hot.
Sure, I love the sort of triangle in that episode.
Yeah.
Oh man, and he's like, just look over here, dumbass.
Yeah,
Come on.
whatever.
Oh.
So I don't walk in with Klingon bodyguards, whatever.
Yeah. I don't know ridges, just spots, jeepers. Yeah.
The Klingon romance is, of course, the most interesting.
Yeah. But I think we see Enterprise gives us some really interesting moments of particularly interspecies romance.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them involving Trip.
Well, yeah. Trip.
He's got a lot of natural comedy in him.
Yeah.
And he charms Phlox's wife, or one of Phlox's wives.
Didn't have to do much.
No, that's
Charm
true.
Phlox's wife.
She was ready
taken.
for charming.
Yeah. For a charming young engineer type fella.
Yeah.
Bit of a southern accent, maybe.
I love Phlox's advice to him as well.
It's like, man, go for it. You're
It's like-
talking about a primed.
It's like you'd be mad not to, essentially. And that sense of the sort of the ethics of
Phlox. Well, I'll certainly miss your acerbic personality, Mr. Tucker.
but like the ethics of those romances are really interesting as well, right? Because some of them end up very complicated.
Mm-hmm.
Like
in some,
Vulcan
perhaps
Clark,
if one of you is a Bolian, can be quite dangerous.
as one understands. I guess they have to have specially prepared quarters when they're being crew on starships because they eat through the normal sorts of facilities. Their fluids.
You thought Mott used scissors to cut hair.
Oh no.
What is that waxy substance?
Oh, pay it no mind. Better you don't think about it.
It's Bolian.
Yeah. I think we also see romance evolve in Star Trek too, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was watching the first and second season of TNG
Mm-hmm.
with my little fella, and at one point he remarked, "Is like, does Riker do this all the time?"
Oh.
We were on Angel 1.
Oh.
And he's like, "What is Riker wearing, Dad?" I said, It's role reversal. It's supposed to be funny." And he's like,
Might be a shirt, might be a kerchief.
Okay, then. Yeah, some of those things don't age as well.
Hmm.
But some of the depictions of romance we see do age really beautifully well. Especially say back again to that moment with Spock and I've forgotten her name, so I'll call her Romulan Commander. Charvenek, there you go. Which is again a beautiful scene, or the love that develops between I've forgotten her name as well. And Khan, the scientist that decides to leave with him.
Yeah, geez, I forget her name too.
Which is part of the reason he comes back after Kirk in the end, right? Because she couldn't handle it, whereas he and his augments could.
Gotta tell you though, Khan, not all that charming in Space Seed. I don't really know what she saw in him. I mean, handsome fella.
Yeah.
But
she seems particularly attracted to power.
Confidence and power.
Yeah,
he's got that.
Oh, in spades. He may be the only person who has more self-confidence than James T. Kirk.
Well, they say when you're augmented, it raises everything.
Yeah.
Except with Julian, or at least he hides it well.
That's true. He's probably the most balanced augment we ever see.
What about, did you mention Khan, enemy or nemesis or antagonistic relationships in Star Trek? Of course, Kirk and Khan's a great one.
Yeah.
Kirk and, Krug.
Yeah, Krug.
You killed my son, bastard.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and again, Picard and his great white whale, the Borg.
Yeah.
They broke your little ship.
Of course, perhaps the greatest one, Cisco and Ducat.
Oh,
or even
gosh.
Kira and Ducat. Everybody in Ducat.
Yeah, he really had he had like the opposite of charm.
He acts like he wants to be your friend.
Oh yeah,
And it's gross even when he's doing that.
Yeah. It's true. I think maybe my favorite pair of enemies would be Data and Lore.
Oh, that's a good one.
Just because Data doesn't want that relationship the whole time.
No.
It's maybe the most pure expression of that I know of in Trek. And Laura's just implacably malicious toward him.
And of course, like Cisco has two. Like, so the Starfleet officer,
Mm-hmm.
his biggest enemy is Skull Dukat.
Mm-hmm.
But the emissary, Kai Wynn, is like it's just as big an enemy.
That's
towards
true. But he's
Cisco.
also got a third great enemy, for whom he is
The Founders?
Javert.
Oh, whoa, wow! I can't believe I forgot that. Of course, that's his best one in a way.
I mean, that guy is the enemy of the uniform.
Yeah.
Right, which is, I mean, that's the metaphorical depths of Cisco's soul right there.
Change your uniform.
Oh yeah, he I think we can honestly say hates Eddington in a way that only Dukat in that cave is really able to bring out of him as well. And that is a crazy episode.
And like Eddington always knows where Ben's coming from. Like Ben's trying to figure out how Eddington turned into that. You know, he's just like, oh, I thought he was a good officer, but you know, Eddington's always like, I was like you, Ben. I know where you're coming from all the time. Like, it's why he's always one step ahead of him too. He understands how Ben thinks. He's like, I used to think like you.
Yeah.
Then I grew tomatoes. They were delicious.
Yeah.
So I joined the Maquis.
It is an odd story when you paraphrase it like that. Although honestly, a really good sun-ripened tomato is pretty much akin to a religious experience. That's
just I'm in my greenhouse outside.
Yeah.
And it's getting a bit cold here in Nova Scotia, let me tell you.
Indeed. Starting to. Yeah, enemy relationships are Star Trek works with, and sometimes that's allowing an enemy to be an enemy, like with Dukat. Sometimes it's finding a way
to end that.
Yeah. Like they seem to have done with the Klingons, and sometimes it's a way to turn an enemy into a friend, like with the Andorians or some of the other species that they initially have conflict with.
Sometimes you're on again, off again, like Worf and Gowron.
Right?
Forget all that stuff in the past. It's nice to see you. Come with me. No, I hate you, Worf. I banish your family and I take your lands. You couldn't see that because this is an audio podcast, but I did the Gowron look.
The Gowron eye look, yeah.
Wish there was a sound for that.
Maybe like that lovely growl.
Oh, that's your Gorn impression.
My Gorn impression is
my mistake.
It's a subtle difference.
But well defined.
Thank you. Yeah. You don't want to hear my Bolian impression.
Oh, I do. We'll save that for the next podcast. Gotta give people a reason to tune in.
Oh, that's true. Next time for Dave's make Bolian noises.
And what could he possibly be talking about?
Don't worry, it's caustic.
All right, well, we're talking about enemies, and of course, you know, there's Janeway and the Borg Queen. I don't know if I guess Archer's biggest thing was Zindi, maybe.
Yeah, and the Suliban for a while there.
Yeah, Silic.
Yeah,
that's true. Yes,
they were an enemy they could have made more of.
Yeah,
but the temporal war thingy just made it, I think, really hard.
Yeah, you know, you could call these types of relationships dysfunctional relationships, but do we have any other examples of dysfunctional relationships?
Oh gosh! let me just start a short list.
None of them that involve Elam Gary, because of course those are all dysfunctional, but purposely so.
Are they the Gatherers? Is that what they're called? It's one of the great, a lovely dysfunctional episode. That's a TNG. Is that where it is? The Gather? Yeah, the Vengeance Factor, which I think a third or fourth season episode of TNG, which is an episode about this long-running historical conflict between factions of a particular species, one of which was driven off the planet and roam around doing sort of raiding and low-level kind of black market trading. And while bringing the leader of these people around, you'll remember now, I'm sure.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. While bringing the leader of this people around, the Akamarians, to meet these gatherers, they're sort of hived off, displaced portion of their population. Leaders among the gatherers and others start to die. And it's revealed eventually by the end that the Akamarian sort of leader's bodyguard, her servant, is this genetically altered living revenge weapon who's over 100 years old, has long has exceeded the lifespan of a normal Akamarian, and exists only to get close to leaders or members of this particular clan of gatherers who were responsible for massacring her own clan. So this sense of this generations long historical vendetta plays out with the Enterprise as the sort of unwilling instrument or unwitting instrument of all of these murders. Yeah, deeply dysfunctional.
One of the other more dysfunctional things we've seen is the relationship of the people that on that planet that Kaiopaka lands on and has to stay on.
Yeah.
Oh, that's dysfunctional.
That's true.
Yeah. And, Seska and anybody.
Yeah.
She's a bit of a dysfunctional character.
Yeah. The Cloud Minders is also a great episode of TOS that shows a profoundly dysfunctional relationship that to me sort of evokes the relationship between the Morlocks and the surface dwellers in Wells' The Time Traveler, the time machine. This sense of a sort of but they flip it, right? The subterranean ones in this case are the I think the servants, and the other ones living above the clouds are these people who simply live a life of bliss because of the immiseration of these surface dwellers and others. And so, there's the other one, that great early TNG episode about the two species, one of which is addicted to the cure for this disease that the other one produces.
But they're actually just keeping them addicted to it, and they don't even need it.
Yeah. The disease would have died out long ago by now.
Yeah, that's a bad one.
Yeah, the intentional sort of addiction of another group.
And I'm telling you, there's dysfunction at Starfleet Academy.
At
least with your.
Are you slandering Red Squad again?
Look,
or Nova Squadron as well, I think, wasn't it?
I've made it very clear that I believe if we took the masks off all these elite squadrons, we would find admirals. I'm very clear about that point.
Well, Starfleet Security used them precisely for that.
There's dysfunction at Starfleet Command too, let me tell you there.
Well, they did allow themselves to get completely infiltrated by a weird worm thing in TNG right at the end of season 1 there.
Remick.
Yeah. They've had it feels like once you get to Admiral in Starfleet, you either just become a total jerk or break bad. Yeah, we see very few well depicted admirals in Starfleet. It's not a good character to show up as.
Well, I think we're getting near the end here, but I think we have to talk about the most important type of relationship in Star Trek first. Save the best for last.
Okay.
The business relationships of Star Trek.
Because
as you know, there is no more important relationship than that of a business transaction.
Sailing the great material continuum.
It can be treacherous.
It can be. But yeah, business relations dominate an enormous amount.
Yeah. Yep. Mostly with Ferengis.
We're not on Ferenginar.
I think part of what we see about the Federation is that one of the weird things about them is that for a society that's not interested in, at least at the Starfleet and at the level of humans, doing much with money, they're extremely wealthy and intensely productive. And they love trade.
Yeah. Unless you're Bones and you're trying to book passage.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
To Genesis.
Yeah.
How can I get a damned permit to do a damned illegal thing? Take permits, many. Ooh. There's
But
not
yeah,
gonna be any permits.
the level on which we see business operating is interesting because we see everything from
The Orion Syndicate.
the Orion Syndicate to space junkyards
Yep.
operated by
Docogen.
planetary systems, right?
Mr. Docogen.
We see restaurants. We
Yep.
see dive bars where they wonder if they know any Klingon opera. or
Holodeck
blues,
arcades.
right? We see a lot of things. Street side vendors, fabric vendors, all sort.
Oh yeah, you got to get your Gormagander on a stick.
Right? There's all sorts of commerce. And we see a lot of marketplaces in lower decks. You're right.
Lower decks in Discovery too.
Yeah,
Getting to see more of that side. Even Picard when they go down to like Free Cloud and stuff like that.
for sure. And we see an awful lot of commerce and trade going on. And
And of course, we touched on a lot of that in our economics episode. But there's that scene, and it makes me think of when I think of like the business relationship in Star Trek, when Quark is talking to that Vulcan female that he's taking a bit of a shining to, and he's explaining to her how business relationships work because she wants to buy weapons. He's just like, "You're not a regular Vulcan, are you?" He immediately finds her interesting. But you know, he's trying to give her wine and all this stuff. She's like, "Is this really necessary? Like, we just need to. Do you have weapons? Yes, I will buy them." Like, She's like, "No. The business relationship is the most important relationship there is. Of course, we have to have the wine and we have to do the whole song and dance." It's like, what are we doing here?
Yeah,
you know.
I mean,
I don't just want to sell you weapons.
Oh, that's true. I mean, for Quark, it's
Galen
true.
does.
Quark loves the chase.
Yeah,
he loves the pursuit, and in many ways, I think you could say Quark loves the romance of business and profit.
Yeah, he's a people person.
That's true, and a Latinum Ferengi.
Thing with that Worf, doesn't share much with his bartender.
But there's another. That's a really good point. That's a business relationship for Quark, but he makes sure to be both attentive and exhortative, and also to make sure you pay your bill.
Oh yeah, it's the perfect place to be. I mean, if you're looking for business deals or inside tips, run a bar.
Oh yeah,
loose lips.
Well, and particularly where he's situated, right on what's suddenly become the hottest piece of real estate in the Alpha Quadrant.
That's why Zek was impressed. He's like, "That's very smart, Quark, knowing that was going to happen." He's just like, "Well, I didn't know." I'm smart at that. It was. Yes, it certainly was.
Biding my time, sir. Yes. But the business relationships also begin contact with the Dominion. It's that one of those first trips that Quark is taken out there to make negotiations that they first even hear about the Dominion early on in season 1, I think. And those business relationships carry us through a huge amount of that series in particular. But business, again, is hugely important to Voyager. The relationships they establish along the way of trade, of exchange.
Of course, Neelix takes care of a lot of that.
Yeah.
Decent businessman / junk dealer himself.
Indeed. He's kind of a multi-talented guy that way.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, that really greases sort of the wheels of their motion through the Delta Quadrant.
Used to work on orbital tethers. Models. They were models. Imagine having an orbital tether model. I would want one, actually, because I want Earth to have an orbital tether.
It would be pretty great.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it's not practical. I'll have to talk to the orbital tether experts on that one. We'll have to have them on the podcast.
Oh, yeah. From Orbital Tether Inc.
Yeah. I think that's what they're called.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're coming to the end here, but before we kind of reach our conclusions, perhaps, I just want to remind everybody that they can reach us at locutorsoftrek@gmail.com. Follow us on Facebook. You can chat with us on there. And you can also find us on YouTube and Twitch. Oh, and of course, you can
anywhere you find your podcast.
Yeah, wherever you find your podcast, you will find us.
Indeed. And with that, friends and relations, family near and far, fictive and literal, end transmission. Well, thanks for that. Then, we'll just take a new heading.
We didn't see it.
I don't know how we missed that. I mean, I wasn't at the censor station. I'll tell you that. Well, thanks. Right. Shuttlecraft out. Whew.
Good thing that Romulan warbird there was just there to
No
stop us
kidding.
from hitting that asteroid.
No kidding.
Holy. And it's a good thing you have a Romulan grandfather. Or I think they were just going to keep our ship
That might have been. Yeah.
for
Yeah.
us.
Yeah. Luckily, one of the other captain was a northerner. You know,
Oh, well.
that's good. That helps.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. But,
Yeah.
well, we missed that, but we're going to have to change course around this asteroid
That was
field, that's for
exciting,
sure.
though, wasn't it?
It was. I've never seen anything decloak before. Woo! Oh, man. Do you see
I've
that?
never seen an asteroid blow up a few feet from the ship.
No. And that disruptor. What a lovely hue of green.
But it interrupted your blue moon.
A little bit.
Hmm.
Yeah, a little bit.
Where are we off to next?
Oh, gosh.
Let's see.
Where are we on the itinerary here?
Where's the itinerary?
Well, we're... What do you mean?
Oh,
I put it in the nav.
I have it.
Oh, great. Where are we off to? Okay,
We're
so...
3 dates in, we're on date
Regular,
4.
Well, we're off to... Draylon 2.
Draylon 2.
All
That's
right,
exciting. I
here
haven't
we
been
go.
to Draylon in years.
Oh, I've never been. What's it like?
It's the best Draylon.
Oh, the king of the Draylons, if you wish.
Draylon 1, Draylon 3, psh, get out of here.
Draylon
There's a
2.
reason we're playing
It's the
Draylon
sweet
2.
spot. All right, well, I'll put that in then.
Welcoming to fellows like us.
332 Mark 8. And warp 3 point...
Do you think that
3.4.
Romulan warbird would escort us there?
I don't know. They got tractor beams. It's worth a shot.
Do you want to ask them?
We'll play for our supper. Let's do it. All right, hailing frequencies open.
I was joking. Do not open that hailing frequency.
You should have seen the look on your face. Joe
Oh,
Montreat.
no. Got me again.